finals. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darko, and welcome to the session number 6. Are you tired?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. Now something completely different. I hope so that you will enjoy. Session number 6 is a panel discussion, and it's called "The Media Visibility and the Driver of Scientific and Social Influence." And today we will discuss about fact-based trust, transparency, and ethics in communication between scientists and media, meaning journalists. And we will want to start to discuss more about how communication is shaped or designed. The role of scientists in the context of their reputation, but also we will try to discuss how their reputation impacts on overall image of science among the general public. So these are some of the topics, but before we start, let's introduce you our guests and our panel. Let's start from my left side, Mr. Mario Malishi. Most of you already know Mario, but still I will say some words about my biography. Mario finished school of medicine at the University of Zagreb. He obtained the MA in Literature and Medicine in King's College. Mario is great, right?
Yep.
Okay. From 2017 and 2019, he was a postdoc at AMC and ICT in the Netherlands. And theoretically, he's in the USA. He donated to Stanford University, where he taught matter of preprints and peer theory. He is also editor in chief of research integrity and peer review journal. Mario, did I forget something? Okay.
Too extensive. Too much information.
Next one, thank you very much for joining us directly from America. Vedana Micic is a creation freelance journalist and editor. Vedana has a very long experience in journalism, especially science journalism, over 20 years, and also in psychology. Her article is a theory of science. New Scientist today is future about inside. She works for, or did work for, Unity, which is a daily Persian newspaper. Also for Novelist, which is another daily newspaper, but mostly regional one. What I need to hear say that you was a fellow of Alpha Fellowship for Journalism Excellence and was shortlisted for the European Science Writer of the Year Award. Vedana also is a founding member of the Croatian Association of Science Writers and board member of the Balkan Network of Science Journalists. And then also, okay. And currently you are external associate of the University of Gothenburg, right? And have been developing organized communication with media and public workshops and works a lot with the creation of science. There is another thing about Vedana regarding the sport, but okay, next time. And last but not least is Mr. Meno Howard, very famous Croatian journalist with also long experience in journalism. From 2001, he has been a reporter on science, technology, medicine, and connected policies for the main online news portal in Croatia. As a freelancer, he also worked with the New Science, Nature, Chemistry, World Research Europe, and IT magazine BAT. In 2015, he has been nominated for the European Science Writer of the Year Award. Ned also founded and outside let's say some sort of section inside the online portal Index.hr, which called Index Lab. And under this name, he's brought information scientists to their common favor and addressing the most important interesting issues of their articles. Okay, this was a very long introduction, but I want to let everybody knows who exactly we are. So let's start with our discussion. First, I'm very curious about my experience. My English So regarding the scientific communication in general, what's your opinion and how do we from real problem?
Okay, I just want to make something clear. I consider myself a little bit of an expert of the topics that I was presenting in today and yesterday. When it comes to journalism, I'm nowhere near. And I think this is why I was invited to be part of this. I think most of us as researchers get zero education in anything that happens to communicate with journalists or what happens without knowing do we get any guidelines. I have never worked in a university that has educated me on how to communicate with them. We would often talk to our PIs and ask them, what is your advice? Because you see your mentors talking to them, and then they tell you, oh, it would be ideal if you asked them to see what they, the questions in advance. Try to avoid talking to them on the phone because you never know what they ask. Try to send emails. But these are so, personal advice that you get from one of your mentors or the others, because no clear guidance exists or no course ever existed on my medical universities or any other ones that I took on how are we supposed to talk to journalists. And yet, whenever we do a study that gets very cited or talked about on Twitter or something, every now and then you will get a scientist who's very interested and very kind that wants you to comment on something. And especially when I became an editor of a journal that is related to peer review, so all the studies that I presented before, now when a new study, and recently one came out that I hope you've seen, there's a big study on bias in peer review, where in finance a Nobel Prize winner and his PhD student wrote a paper together. And then this was randomized across 3,000 reviewers invited to review the same paper. One were told the name of the Nobel Prize winners, the other was not told, and they see huge differences in the recommendations of reviewers based on the fact that we know who the author is. And so this is now generating currently a big buzz around the world because it shows the bias of things. And so we get approached by journalists to comment on these things. And I think that's where I come from. I think that we don't have, often we, as sort of citizens, we see these great movies where journalists have discovered usually bad things that happen in our society that have been held under rugs, but we don't know what is our role. We don't know what are we legally allowed to say or not. Are we always, universities tell us you're representing yourself when you're talking to the journalists, not the university. Let them make it clear that this is your opinion, because you can maybe be violating some public conduct. But there isn't something, I don't know if there maybe if there's a Coursera course or any kind of online course that can teach us how to better communicate with journalists. But we also don't know transparently, often when I do talk to journalists, why is it they picked up me? How do you guys find us? Is there a list of top journals in specific topics that should be there? All I know from research that has been done in the United States is when COVID occurred, and we know how it affected the whole world globally, that scientists who were talking in newspapers in the United States about COVID were not those who had the most publications and most research about COVID. It was those that were more politically oriented or more known in journalism or who had access to this. And I have nothing to do with that, so that is not my research, but we know how much this has been in the news. But I think this is that sort of joy and transparency that it should be. Should a journalist be contacting me as an employee university directly, or should it come through a university office for scientific communication that exists or something like that? And I just wish as a young person, when I started, that you would get this guide. We get so many student guides, we get so many, methodological guides of how to write a paper, but I don't think we ever get a guide how to talk to another side and what is everything like that. So I'll stop there.
Maybe just to clarify what the beginning, you were in the war with some very prestigious institutions. So did they have a kind of the department regarding the applications of the market that you can maybe rely on during your communication with the journalists?
They do, but you are never told to contact them, or you rarely know what they do. What we do know is that they every now and then release some newsletters about research that is being done, and maybe they will contact you if they want to highlight the research from the university. But that is their own team trying to spread our own prestige of our university. That is not an external journalist coming to talk to you. And so I never knew if, for example, you contact me, am I first supposed to check something with them, or even have them there present, or be guided by anything that we do? I mean, it's the same when we get newspapers or things like that. I think we lack that.
Is there any kind of a program or education program for the science in the institution, for example, if they teach you how to communicate, or if you are going to some courses regarding this topic?
They teach you only how to communicate and what to present at least the universities that I worked, how to present at conferences, how to design your posters, how to write your papers, but not how to communicate with journalists.
So no communication, no. Thank you very much, Brian. Better now. In the beginning, I said that you are well-known Croatian science journalist, but you're also a science writer. So can you make some sort of explanation what is a science writer and what is a science journalist?
Yes, of course. I just want to address a little bit this what you said. I'm really surprised that you have this this kind of situation in USA or Europe, because when I started to work with international media and started to work more with international scientists, I realized that Croatian scientists really don't have any, let's say, culture, or maybe that's the too strong word, how to communicate with media. They also don't have any motivation to communicate with media. And I realized that also there is no any education about communication with media. There are no science writer or specialized PR staff on the universities and the institutions. So the difference is really astonishing, because when you speak with international scientists, I said international, but not Croatian one, but from the more science developed countries, let's say like this, you can see that they know how to communicate. Not everybody, but most of them are prepared for some kind of detailed questions. They don't patronize the journalists. They try to explain everything. No question is stupid for them. Yeah. On contrary, when you talk with Croatian scientists, that's they don't like to speak with journalists. They have this really strong opposition to even contact the media, to talk with media. They think that all questions are stupid. They are really afraid that everything will be put out from the context and stuff like that. It's really complicated situation. So yeah, I'm really surprised that so you also have this experience in some other institutions.
I mean, I came to Stanford 2.5 years ago, and one of our Swedish colleagues asked our PI, could we have an internal department meeting, because he's always in the news, that he advises us how to approach journalists or things like that, because it was not part of our training there. And so I mean, we can do a raise of hands and do surveys, but I really want to know, which institutions actually implement a specific course on communication and questions, and how we, what to ask to you, what not ask to you, and things like that.
So sorry, I just wanted to say that after I was 20, I'm 20 years and more in journalism, and as I like science, really, I wanted to do something about it. And as I work in media for so long, I'm really aware that media will not change. Media will stay the same. And in these 20 years, I was just observing how the media going down in the quality. And it's really painful for me to observe, because when I started as a young journalist, there was like really high criterion, and now it's not. And I think that will not change. So if we can do something, is that we can maybe give some kind of skills to the scientists, how to communicate with media and be more present in media. And that's why I just wanted to do this kind of workshop for Croatian scientists. And I did some little survey about 300 scientists answered the survey. It's really informal, it's not something formal. But for example, I asked them, which are the biggest problems that you have with communication with media? And okay, the most people answer that they are afraid that media will wrongly interpret their words. But the second reason, and more than 30% of people answer that, is that they are afraid that they will be promoting themselves too much. And this is thing that I think it's important, because we can see that this is for Croatian science, Croatian science institution. We can see that all system in Croatian science is really afraid of media and really doesn't motivate their scientists to communicate with media. And for me, I think it's really awful, because we need science in media right now more than ever. We can see that in pandemic, because if you don't have scientists in media as the biggest authorities who have something to say about things like health crisis or global warming, you will have chaos. I mean, and the problem is that you cannot be authority just tomorrow. You must build this relationship with media. So, I mean, to answer one of your questions also, how journalists pick who will talk to them. They will pick people who will always answer the phone, and they will pick people that will always know to give some answer, no matter that if that answer is really wrong or not really appropriate or something like that. So that's the problem. And if scientists are more usually more in media, if they more know how to communicate with media, they will be more present in media. That's really a simple thing. So I think it's really important. I'm sorry, I'm too long. and just to answer the question, the difference between science journalist and science writer. So science writer is somebody who knows how to science work, who knows how to scientific research is done, and who knows to read the science paper, and who knows how to explain this complex scientific context to wider audience who doesn't know how to read it. And he will know, or she will know how to find the story in this science research, and then present it to the public. But the accuracy of research will be okay. And the science journalists have to be science writer, but he or she also have to be journalist. So she has to have a journalistic skill, pose questions, find truth, find stories. I mean, the whole set of skills. So that's the difference.
Thank you, Madam. I remember 20 years ago when I started public relations, we mostly concentrated on the print media and television, which was the most important media back then. But in the meantime, the media landscape drastically changed, and you're working now on media. And the presence of the internet, especially social media, also gives scientists opportunity to play a more important role in creating content. So, for your opinion, what new media brings to the science in the way how they can explain their work, and also provide what are barriers, because new media is also filled with a lot of tricks and lies.
Thank you. This is an important question, I think. New media, when we talk about new media, we probably mean also social networks like YouTube, some podcasts and things like that. Yeah. So, new media gives opportunity to science journalists in various ways. First of all, we have to consider that what new media means for us journalists in the process of research for our writing. This is one important thing. We have so many tools now that were not available before. We can read research papers. We know how to get reliable information from reliable sources, and they are just a few clicks away from us. We just have to have the knowledge which one is reliable and which one is not reliable. Also, we need knowledge to distinguish even when the source seems reliable, like for example, a reliable source certainly is Lancet, but one of the most horrible lies ever and false news ever was published in Lancet, and that was by Wakefield, who is the guru of anti-vaccination movement. So, as a science journalist, you have to understand all these things. You have to have this knowledge, and then you can use these different tools that can help you. As I said, some sources, some outlets in which you can get the information, and then also some outlets where you can find certain materials, like for example, when there was this pandemic, it is still. So we quickly learned where we can get the newest information about numbers, how many people are in the hospital, how many are dying, and all these statistics and things like that. I remember I started writing very early about COVID already in February 2020, and in the beginning I was going to Chinese internet pages where Chinese doctors were. There is a huge community of Chinese doctors, medicine workers, and I had to pull information from there because the bases were not there at that moment. And then they gradually developed them, and they became very good. And then you could put this in your article. Some graphs, and these graphs are in real time because they are interactive. They change every day and things like that. You can put also something from YouTube, some educational material. You can create your own educational material and things like that. So this is another thing. Things that help you in the process of working on science education, on science articles. And then the third thing is how to present them. You see, there is a big difference in when you write on internet. You are not really limited with how huge your content is. In newspaper, you can have this box, this many words, and that's all. But if you work on internet, you just have to think, not to overwhelm the readers, keep them interested in your text, and then you are not limited. You can put so many infographics, interactive cards. You can put so many different things that help to explain the content that you are presenting.
Sorry to interrupt, but since we all know the readers mostly skip the text and just read the titles or subtitles or
I'm just going to get. Yeah. So this influence, this news media influences me. How am I writing? Because first of all, I can see, in my program where I worked on, in the journal, in my portal, I can see how many people read my articles. I can check how long do they stay reading my article? In average, of course, some will read just the title and the first sentence, and some will read to the end. But and then I can get some relation, and from this relation, I have to, form a style of writing. So my style of writing is first, I will serve the largest community. In the first few paragraphs, I will say all the most important things that I have to say. And then later on, through the text, I can continue for those who are really interested to find out more, to get some more knowledge, more information on the subject, more explanations on the same subject. Then they can continue reading. And I just have to work hard not to lose their concentration, to keep them as much as possible engaged. Yeah. And then finally, I will try to cut it. And then finally, it is new media offers us much more. We can have much bigger reach. We can, you see, like papers, people buy, they read them, and they wash the windows with them or throw them away. But on portals, you can have the same article for years. It is there. If you want to find it, you just write some keywords and you can find it. So this is very important. This stays. It's like books. They are on shelves. So I think I see it as a very positive, step in media development, in journalism. You have to be conscious that what you are writing now, you are writing actually for years and years to come. I can find my articles which I wrote 20 years ago. I can still find them because I know them, and I can find them. And you can have a much bigger reach because it goes to Facebook. Your portal can publish this on Facebook, can publish this on different social networks, and your article can have a reach unimaginable. Like just recently, one of my articles was read by 500,000 people in Croatia. One article, 500,000 people. For Croatia, is huge.
I agree. Anyhow, we don't want to make any kind of barriers between the press and the scientists. So let's make it like the end space. We already have some questions from the audience. So can we go to Mike? Hello.
Well, I have more because 15 years ago, the discussion I had now is the discussion I had in my research. And I actually did quite a large study on the cooperation of that cooperation with journalists and scientists in terms of communicating scientific results. I can say both the stand for the researcher here or for the journalists, but I would like to take the stand for the journalists. Because I think that the journalists often enter this discussion in the lead part. And the reason for that is a lot of arrogance from the side of the researchers, because the researchers don't really understand how media works, and they don't spend time in understanding it. And one of the very significant results of my research was that you can analyze how we use knowledge and how we formulate knowledge. This is the opposite ways done by journalists and researchers, and that creates tension between the two parties. Now, the problem is that as researchers, we want to control the message. We don't want to let go of the message. We don't trust the journalism. But if you want to play with the journalists, if you want to play with the media, if you want to be active in media as researchers, we need to understand that playing with media is done by media rules. So we must allow the journalists to make the message forward, to make the format, and we can put the content into the format, but we can't decide the format. We can't decide the language, and we can't decide how it's formulated by the end of the day. Just that's the journalist's job. And we try to explore that as research, we actually underestimate what journalists can do. Because journalists are experts on their field, they're not experts on our field. And we as researchers often not the journalists, but they should know as much about our topics as we do our stuff. But that's not possible. Journalists are generalists, maybe. Some of them have expertise like the two of you within research, but many journalists are journalists, and you can't expect them to understand how the non-symbolic intensive world works. So in Denmark, we have a sport for journalist bashing, and that's what's happening over the lunch table, where researchers are sitting there complaining about how stupid journalists are and how little they know about research. But we fair to the journalists because they can't know everything about research. So if we want to, as researchers, to engage with the media, we must start by respecting the media first. That's a very important message. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I mean, I just want to say that I really agree with you on every point. And when I do this kind of workshop for scientific media workshop, I start first half hour or 1 hour to just explain how the media function. So from the really basic stuff, for example, the headline, that's the problem for most scientists because headline usually is not what it says in the article, and the scientists have big problems with headline. But I try to explain them, okay, sometimes it's better to give attention to the article no matter how much and which kind of attention, because it's for broader good. Okay, sometimes it's really misleading and it will damage, but you must find the middle line, yeah. And I think that that's very good because if scientists can understand how media are functioning, then they can prevent some misinterpretation that will happen. And also, I think it's very important to know that, for example, one of the problems that scientists have, they don't want to give up their language because they have this feeling that if they don't talk in science language, they will be wrongly understood or they're not like scientific enough. But the main premise is that you are trying to explain something to really broad public who doesn't know any clue about really basic science works like genome or GMO, or they don't know what that means. So you must explain everything. And that's the part where journalists can do much better than scientists. Explain stuff to a wider audience.
I use just, if I can, just a little bit of a contrarian view, because I think we all know where we work as a sort of scientists. A lot of the communication that we are trying to sort of now take over from me is the use of Twitter. Twitter is extremely big in the United States, and I know it's becoming bigger in Europe, and the majority of not only papers are being discovered by that, but it's the way we transfer the information, and it is how we are now controlling the messages of our research. So most universities will now have trainings on how to do Twitter engagement and not communication with the media, because we get to promote our own scientists. And we know when it comes to metrics, the majority of our blog entertainment and everything else actually most comes from media on Facebook that we have posted, and then our communities have communicated on them. But outside of medical communication of research, we shouldn't forget the work that is being done by the Cochrane organization and what they call plain language summaries or infographics, where a specific targeted information for health is being tailored towards patients. And I've seen, I think we've all seen during the pandemic, we were being engaged in Instagram or in Twitter or in TikTok, then whenever something was COVID related, they had a very big disclaimer: health information should be looked at health authorities. And I'm not sure that as journalists, you agree with this. I don't think that every article in the newspaper has this disclaimer. Health information should be looked at, and I think this is where the language barriers come from, because it's we haven't necessarily agreed as a society who do we turn to, especially because journalists are supposed to alert us when we shouldn't trust those organizations that maybe the countries and regimes are telling us that we should trust. And I think that's where sometimes we get into that trouble.
Well, I think that's as you mentioned. Sorry, I don't know your name. As you said, there are different kinds of journalists. There are science journalists and there are ordinary journalists, just journalists. And then the scientist is speaking with some journalists. He has to be also informed, or I think a science journalist should inform the scientist that he has some scientific background, that he's a science journalist, because this is a completely other level of discussion. And this is one first step. And actually, I do this many times. I do this when scientists don't know me. Usually they know me now already after 20 years that I'm present. So most of them know me, but some certainly don't. And so the fear, that is the problem. Yes, scientists are afraid that we will present their discoveries or something that they say, some sentences or something that we will twist and we will simplify and we will make sensationalist or something. As Vedrina said, they're especially afraid of the main titles and some other subtitles and things like that. But we also, as science journalists and journalists, other journalists also, if they are serious journalists, we have to, from our side, also build this trust. How I try to do it, I can tell you my example. I don't know. I know other journalists have also something similar, some similar approaches, but this is how I do, and I inform the scientists that I will do like that. That this will be the process. And what will be the process? First, just a second, I first discuss with them on the phone and I record what they have to say concerning some subject. After that, I transcribe and try to explain, and I investigate this material or on internet and from what I recorded and like that. Then I write the text, and when I write the text, then I send it to scientists to check important things if there are some mistakes. So they are really confident at that point. They are really confident that nothing crazy will come up. I know that not every journalist has the time to do this process. But I have, and I try to do like this. Of course, if you are opposed to the, if you have some scientists like we have in this pandemic who were talking some crazy things, then of course you will not send them. You will just call them, and then you will write against them and things like that, and you will show that this is crazy. But I think both have to work. Scientists from their side and science journalists in general, on building this confidence. Because for scientists, it is not very easy. I know that some scientists, they complain, they told me, that their colleagues either will get envious if they are very, very present in the media. Either they will criticize them because they oversimplify some things, and simplification sometimes seems like almost pseudoscience if it is not done properly. So things like that. And then when they talk to the journalists and come back to their colleagues, then they have to be comfortable with themselves, with what was published, what was said, and with how it was presented in the public. So I just wanted to add that. Sorry if I.
Thank you very much. Very shortly, your comment, and we have another question. Can we got the mic for the?
Thank you. I think one of the problems here is that we need to distinguish between two roles that the scientists are in contact with the journalists. One of them is sort where you comment daily, and that's where you as a researcher meet the generalist journalist. And most researchers most frequently meet the generalist journalists. So all the prejudices against journalism and journalists stem from the fact that researchers are being asked to comment on daily events with journalism. It's a completely different game when you as a researcher meet science journalists, I'm sure of you, because you are highly professional and you know how well they can do that. But all the prejudice has been created long before the research meets somebody like you. On my own PhD has always been very, very, very rarely that I have the chance of being interviewed by science journalists, but very frequently by newsrooms. There is completely different.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah, but that's the point that, you know, communication is a skill, and it's also really important skill. So, for example, there are really basic stuff that scientists can do when you talk with journalists who is not really prepared. So you can you must know that you must be short, that you must say everything in 3 sentences maximum. You must know that you have to focus on the most important stuff in the first 2 sentences. And there's some skills that you can apply here, and really that can make your communication with that kind of journalists and why the audience better. That's why I think we need education for scientists, how to communicate. For example, one of the main rules is that you must explain stuff for the for the 12-year-old children, because that's the level that you must put yourself when you are explaining things and stuff like that. But I wanted to tell you more because one example why it's really important for the scientists how to communicate, how to know how to communicate. There is one example in the beginning of the pandemic. One doctor from Burundi, he was in the hospital and using social networks, not Twitter, but Facebook. And this is one of the dangers using the social networks for communication when you don't know what you're doing. So I wanted to say, people get vaccinated, but the message was wrong. He started with, I'm vaccinated and I got COVID, but I want you to say that if I didn't get vaccine, I will be maybe not. It's not important. First sentence, that was real damage. So he wanted to do something good, but he messed up in the first sentence. And I knew what would happen, and that exactly happened the next day. Every media had the headline. He was vaccinated, but he got COVID. And that was one of the examples of why we have to be really careful when we communicate. It's really important issue with our crisis.
And then the wars because people involved have to work with right? So for the general public, that's like a very uncertain situation. How do we do it? We have another question. Eva, right?
Yes, I have a question that is related more to research integrity than communication skills. What we've seen with the increased focus on science in the last year is that in many cases in media we hear scientists who will present themselves with credibility that is earned in one area of their expertise, but they will express their opinions on some other methods, and they are not really so professional, and this is something that has really ruined important to trust in, within the public and with trust inside. Because you just spend your credibility on issues that where you are not really around subject to people. And I guess that, well, it never happens in your articles. You will very carefully choose who you talk to and who you talk about. But for instance, in this ordinary journalist article, this is something that we very often see, and I know how to find that.
Okay.
No.
These pandemic years, they really taught us much, a lot. We had different experiences, not just two or many experiences. We had experiences with scientists who were either voluntary or unconsciously completely incompetent and were spreading really dangerous thoughts. And this is why we have the situation in Croatia that we have. One of the reasons, one of the important reasons that about almost 50% of our population is not vaccinated. We are in the top in the world, in a sense that how many people died from COVID and things like that. Where we had very bad communication, and the communication was bad on both sides. We had corrupted scientists or bad scientists or lousy scientists on one side that wanted to be present in the media, wanted some popularity and things like that. And on the other side, we had always thirsty media ready to publish anything that will attract people, whether it is true or not, because the media were not up to the task also. So this was a very bad mixture, and the result was not very good. I was really struggling. I was writing about COVID every day for 2 years, practically every day, another article, and I had to, fight against this guy and that guy, and so many theories. It was very difficult. So I think that it is in such times, it is very important that scientists who are really good scientists and whose field is the field that is concerned, that they don't spare their energy, that they involve and are ready. And I'm very, very thankful to few of the scientists, some 10, 15 scientists with whom I communicated on different topics during this pandemic and who were really up to the task. They became my friends through this communication, because we communicated so much every few days. I would hear the same scientists and come back to the same scientists. Now we have to cover this. Now we have to cover this. How can we cover this in the best way? And we were fighting together against misinformation, against bad scientists and vicious scientists, I would even say. So from this interaction, if we have a good interaction, scientists and science journalists, we can do something. But the cocktail is dangerous. There are always some freak scientists, pseudoscientists, and there is always sensation thirsty media. And when you combine this, you will have, that there was one research, I think that it was in Nature, that false news, they spread 3 times faster than real news. And there is, of course, a reason, false news is always very exciting, mind-blowing. Whoa, what? No, I have to see this. This is something special. And the science news, they seem boring in the beginning, they're always a little humble. They don't, bring cure for cancer every day and things like that. So that's the problem. So we have to be conscious of that. And
I just want to say, okay, so
Do you want to go?
I wanted to say something shortly because I think this is really important. I was thinking a lot about your question, what to do. I mean, the responsibility is like how for all the media and all the scientists who are mentioning stuff that they don't really know. But what's to do in that case? Maybe one of the answers is that there is some kind of a judgment from the broader science community when that happens. But I think it has to come from the institution. For example, if we have some scientists who are commenting stuff that are obviously wrong or not truthful or something like that, it will do damage because science is always authority for the broader public. But if the judgment, if the judgment came from the institution, for example, the university, it can be really more, with more authority than some other scientists to say, okay, you are wrong. That's my opinion.
I just wanted to say, when it comes to sort of this case that you presented from Dubrovnik and thing, I think we need to change a little bit of dynamic how we talk about this. We should not blame the doctor who wrote this, and I know you identified immediately the mistake, but we know here the role of the cessationalists that took off on that. And in an ideal world, I always think what we can do and teach to our students of how we can develop, design intervention studies. So what would be ideal in this case? That if I post something on a social media, which is my private right as a sort of freedom of speech, does that mean that a university that I work for, if it's a medical one, should be checking and have an office and advise me that this would be a potential result from that? Does your organization needs to have your superior, because you do have an organization for your journalists, for all journalists in the country, should say this cessationist media should be not? Should they post every statement about this is cessationist media? And that would be ideal world, but we can't from that. I mean, do these controls. We've seen what happened in the United States, where the president of the United States was blocked from Twitter because of misinformation of many other things. And that's as much as some social media can go. And I know that this is a very tricky pandemic, has shaken everything around the world when it comes to all this information, but it isn't easy. And I think that's where a lot of this mistrust comes from, because we say that there should be this organization who will now condemn that one person or one journalist. But to actually be able to do that, that requires several meetings, people writing petitions, and it will take a month or two till they all agree that this person's sentence that happened 2 months ago is inappropriate. We are not living in that fast world, and I think we've definitely seen that during the pandemic. So I think we all, especially being here, we all work on the good side, but we know that that's not easy. And if we put this back on the reviewer side that we talked about before, editors have struggles finding reviewers. How can I trust you to be a great scientist? Can I, as a scientist, log on to mydoctors.com, where all the doctors are reviewed by patients and which one is good? Does a page of myjournalist.com exist, where all of your names are there, that I can see which one is better, which one is not, which one I should talk to? No. Should that be good? Maybe. Can I have time? Do I have time to do that? No. And I think this is where we, if I search a reviewer, I look for Google Scholar or databases to find how many papers they publish, thinking that I can trust them. And I think we haven't agreed upon the proper ways of us directly contacting you or checking our background information. We still need a lot of this intermediary. You explain to me who you are, I explain to you who I am, without maybe having an agreed upon databases where this information is shared. And if we are moving towards open access, which this conference is about, maybe that's a part of open access that we need. Open access of information about who we are, who you are, when we talk about these things, and maybe links to our profiles on whatever this website becomes one day is what each news article needs to have, to know what are the two sides engaging in this kind of conversation. But I'm talking with utopias. We are not there, and we probably won't be there in 50 years or 100 years. But would I be more comfortable doing that if I talk to you? Yes. Would you be more comfortable talking to a researcher from that? Yes. But I don't think we're there.
Yeah, and regarding what you said, we call Twitter, Facebook, all social network actually media, but not Facebook media because the content is free and well. Anyhow, we have another question.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. So I'm next to get better at the position. When I see you, it has been like mediator between the media and the science. I feel very connected to science in terms of you have to publish. So I wonder how hard it is for you to publish. And what is the effect of the story that you publish and how do you choose the story that you want to write about?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's more interesting for me than for Nenad, because Nenad is actually staff writer of big national media, so he gets published every day. Yeah, for me, as a freelancer who is working for international media, it's more difficult. And that's, I mean, an interesting question because quite big international media like Science or Nature, New Scientist, or I don't know, Physics Today want to publish when it comes to science. So it's also, it has to be, it's difficult to publish there, especially if you're not native English speaker, especially if you're not really known on the beginning, but the story is most important. So they need a really good story. And they will always publish something that is maybe not really some breakthrough research and something that is really offending. But they will publish also a good story. So is there any effort, special effort behind some kind of research? Is there any interesting story about science with doing the research? Also, they really want to publish journalistic pieces. For example, we can see now more and more how scientists and journalists work together to find out some misconducting in scientific publishing and peer review stuff. And that's stories that are really, I mean, easy to publish. And regarding some other stuff, for example, I would sometimes think that some things from Croatia and Croatian research is really important and interesting, but it's really hard to sell stories that are from countries like Croatia and some really big international media. That's the problem. I mean, it would be better if we can promote more Croatian science in international media, but they're not really like difficult to sell this kind of stories, no matter how interesting they are. Because I think that sometimes the big publishers like Nature or Science have little bit precedents against research, which are done in countries like Croatia, and that would be wrong. That's only my opinion. Maybe it's not true.
Yeah, I wanted to say also that it is a very specific situation for us in Croatia. I was also writing. I work both as a freelancer and I have a permanent job as a science editor and journalist. But as when I was doing freelancing, I noticed that, and this is actually normal, it is expected. Even when there is some discovery done by a Croatian journalist, and it is published in some influential journal like Cell, for example, or I don't know, Lancet or something like that, British Medical Journal, whatever. Nature even. Then I can see, you know, the journals, the strong journals, foreign journals like Nature, Science, and etc. They have actually their own journalists, and they will cover these stories. And they are professionals, and they trust them. And so I usually succeeded with stories that are very specific, like that have some you know, importance, which is important for the world, and it's not something that you can neglect, that this thing exists, and at the same time it is somehow local. For example, there are certain, I was writing about certain animals that came to the Adriatic Sea. I know the Croatian names are, sorry, Rebrashi, I don't know if it means something to you. I forgot the name in Latin. So these are like little balls. They look like little balls, and it is known from before that this animal, which is actually invasive animal, it comes from the Atlantic, and that it had the fishes in Black Sea, a real huge damage, billions of euros. They almost, you know, destroyed the fishes there. So then they came to Croatia, to the Adriatic Sea. And then, of course, I could interest this new scientist. I could interest with this story. So there are these different opportunities you have to see. You know, it's a little difficult for us who are from small countries when we want to publish stories in big journals. Like I was writing about physics in Yugoslavia. I was writing for Physics Today journal, and it came even on the front page. It was the main article of one number, but this was interesting for them, you know, physics in Yugoslavia, how it developed from where it came, how it, you know, what happened with the destruction of Yugoslavia and things like that. So this was interesting. It was interesting story, and no foreign science journalist can write about it. Only a journalist here can write it. So this there are these specific niches where yeah.
Just sorry. For example, story that was really easy to sell is when the earthquake happened in Croatia, and after that there was like big falls in Banja. You know, I don't know, more than 100 falls, single. So that was really easy to sell because it's really an interesting phenomenon. And I wanted to maybe see future commission me for that in a second. And I wanted just to say that because that is also this kind of thing are really good opportunity for science to promote science in general media and mainstream media, because they get to comment from the point of geophysicists what happened then, and people will read because it's really okay. You have one big symbol in your garden, and then when science gets comment something like that, that's a small step that science became visible in media. I just wanted to put that example.
One of which are quite interesting. Being moderated for this time of quite just go to one question, which I think very relevant question. So we have another question down there. I think one couple, right? And I forgot to mention that the driver is not without the table and how our audience from Zoom, and we have also a question. Can someone give a somehow low clear?
Already great. Okay, so I just wanted to hear the questions in response to the audience thing. So we have united research with few researchers that are relating science communication on students. And one of the things that we've been observing, we haven't quite done to the point of studying, and we want to get your take on it, and we have need to gathering and formulating more clear research questions around it. We've seen to some extent that we're starting to observe in some aspects, a convergence in some of the practices of both researchers who are themselves more actively doing science communication, and then journalists who are doing work that starts to approximate a lot more of what research are. They're gathering data, organizing, analyzing data. So the question that I'm thinking about is around some of the same pressures apply. And then the other thing that we've been observing is that there is, to some extent, some of the change in the practice around data openness, for example, the use of preprint, and our practices that change in how scholars communicate, and then we see some adjustments also in what the science journalists are needing to do as a response. And there's some mechanism there of how that exchange takes place. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on, first of all, this idea that there is some convergence in practices of researchers, community design, journalists, creating the more research, and any insights you might have on how the practices of one end up affecting the practices of the other.
When you say convergence, what do you actually? I didn't understand.
Yeah, I mean, we see that. And so one of the things that we've been trying to talk about, we look at our sustainable time, trying to really push the idea that science communication is one of that it should be included as being part of the science practice. Because we are seeing more and more researchers are themselves, they're not always running journalism. They're out there writing models, they're out there communicating directly. They're doing science communication, and they're taking on that journalist role. There's a part of a researcher that's starting to do what was originally the role of the community. But on the other side, I think we see that some journalists, not everyone, some journalists start to do journalism and start to learn a lot more than research. It's not one thing where the pandemic and then people want to local reporters. He was downloading all of the data from the government and trying to synthesize it and analyze and figure out the trends and explain those trends to the public. So he was doing data analysis and presenting that. It's starting to look a lot more using open data and producing analysis and results. And it looks a lot more like this. So that's what I mean by the convergence. There is one is doing the practices of the other, and some they meet in the middle, and some people are. You'd be hard to distinguish where they leave off and how they make it and where they work.
But no, I also saw that trend a little bit, and I think it's really exciting because data journalism is right now a really hot topic in the journalism world, and it's really there's lots of stories, especially cross-border investigation stories that have been done from the point of views that have data scientists and journalists inside. One of my friends in Berlin, journalist, said he's doing a really big story about conflict of interest in publishing. I mean, that's in terms of science, sorry, they didn't disclose all that they had. So he actually had such data science, did algorithm and they can show like thousands of research technical papers to get the story. So that's really, I think it's really exciting, and I think it's really good. And also, science students mostly are scientists who don't want to do like real time anymore, but they usually go to master in communication and they become science journalists. And I can see more and more people do that because there is like so some kind of a little movement in science, that science wants to communicate more science to the broader public, and they can realize that this is a really important part of science. So I think it's really exciting, and I can see the same thing that you said. I don't know if I answered the question.
One more to look at the content around. Do you think that the change in the practices of research with the opening time, the effort making data available, is also affecting helping to encourage this trend in terms of they seeing the openness and saying, well, now we have more access to.
Yeah, of course. For example, for the, let's say, normal journalists, you can't science journalists. It's really hard to get to science research, the papers and the research. They don't know how to do it. They don't have access. I must confess, I used GitHub many times, but they don't know how to do it. So this open source science is really important thing for them.
Okay, another question from everyone to add something.
Yeah, I noticed also this trend that you were mentioning, and there are so many things going on there. There are even, so to say, kinds of communities, like many scientists, they turn to LinkedIn, and they have discussions with LinkedIn. They are not on the Facebook. Then some scientists, they like to publish some threads on Twitter. They publish some research, and then they explain the tweet by tweet and tweet by tweet, and then you can know if they are good scientists. Then you friend them, you contact them, and you follow them, and then you get inspirations from them. You know, when you see that something is very nice in color, and you have enough knowledge to understand what they are talking, then you can turn it into even more simple story, which is meant for publishing. So there are many nice things in this media that is going on, that's happening. Unfortunately, many bad things are happening at the same time, and we have to fight again and again against bad threat.
I would like to maybe just mention one very positive example that happened that was alerted to me by someone who's here actually in Finland, and maybe some of you have heard about this. When the new ministry was giving a new call for funds, there was a negative feedback from some of the journalists that what the ministry is being funded, the type of research that is being funded, was very basic or useless. So there are a lot of taxpayers' money is being used for research that shouldn't be used on. And then the Finnish scientists started a campaign on Twitter, where all of them all of a sudden started tweeting what they do, why is it important, and what they're researching. And they were able to get the full funding and prevent that sort of initial bad press that was happening about the taxpayers' money. So I think we know that there's this huge power in media, and the more we open, the more we open and start communicating directly. I don't know what will that mean for the future, journalists, but I think that openness definitely helps. The more we know what is being done, and the more we communicate with you, I think we'll all benefit from it.
Well, actually, this question relates to the things that they all answered in particular. It's about the education of journalists. So if they will be more educated, but as I can see, there is now for them to specialize for covering science. But is there any education at or let's say to the level of our country, Croatia, because I think it's quite different than
No. Unfortunately, there is no such education, and we as members of this science journalists community, we discussed this problem. I know I'm very conscious that a science journalist has to be, if somebody wants to write about science, he has to understand what he's writing about. You cannot place right questions even if you don't understand the field that you are dealing with. How can you ask, you know, if you don't understand? How can you explain if you don't understand whom you can explain? You know? You can maybe write the words that that the scientists wrote, but if you don't understand these words, then how will understand the public these words? So each and every word that is written in your article and it is written about a certain subject, you have to understand. So you have to have a basic science education. So I think the best science journalists usually come from the field where they're, you know, they were studying some science themselves, either, you know, medicine, physics, biology, or something like that. And because they know the science process methodology, they know the methodology, they know how science works and can relate, even if the field is not theirs field. There are different scientific methodologies. There is not one scientific methodology. The basics are there, but every field has its own methodology, you could say. You know, there are soft sciences, hard sciences, there are this kind of journals and that kind of journals. There is, you know, meta-analysis in medicine and different kinds of research, and you can understand, you have to understand what power each of these processes has, you know, how relevant it is, and things like that. So when you know the science and you understand the science and you are practicums, you know, and you made experiments and you saw some things yourself with your eyes and you understand the scientific methodology, then it's a little easier to become also a good writer than vice versa. You can be a good writer and really don't understand what's going on. And this I saw in this pandemic, you know, some excellent writers. I'm envious of their skills, writing skills, you know, but they made so many mistakes during the pandemic, you know, talking or writing or presenting in their media. So we need this kind of education. So either for scientists to become science journalists, or, you know, the presenters of science, or for journalists to become again science journalists. And really, for some things like that, it's better that we have those people, you know, the science journalists from any side, that they present scientific matters to people. Of course, sometimes just normal journalists ask you some questions and you have to explain them. You can expect that, but then it becomes a little more difficult. I would suggest to scientists that they demand, in such situations, that they demand that they show them the text and they check their text. I do this, and I know much more about science than average normal science, normal journalists.
I just wanted to give a good example of a PhD study at the University of Zagreb. The university is they usually organize workshops. One of the workshop leaders was Armando Chopin, who told us how to give elevator pitches, you know, how to explain what are you doing in 3 sentences in 3 minutes to the ordinary people, not just to the ordinary public, but also to your founders or in industry representatives for whom you want to work with. So this is one way of you know, simplifying the context which you want to share. That's good, and perhaps that is one of the operations.
Yeah.
I just made the release date secret on the just highlight
Yeah.
the keyboard. Very often to you know, what is money go around and extremely good. Actually, reaching there from the products and any kind of visual, they can do say something about what the one to find. So it's like how I want to do
Yeah, regarding education for journalists, I think it can be done and not be done, and you can actually give workshop for made journalists, for example, how to recognize the proper source, how to recognize which journals are important, which one, what is impact factor, what is maybe which kind of research are more important, how to recognize the authority, scientists or authorities in the field, and stuff like that. And that is something that you can probably educate journalists. But as then said, some things it's hard to communicate to journalists, which are more, you know, they have to understand science language, they have to understand how to read science papers, and that would be difficult to learn. But I wanted to say that there is a deeper problem here. I think that maybe even more solution will be even more than educated journalists. Solution will be that media editors and publishers and owners of media recognize that science is important. And one way that they can recognize that is that they actually have proper science journalists in their yeah, the media. And they if you see Croatian media, you will not see many you know, scientific science. So there are no sections. There are no science sections in
Especially
Croatian media, and that's the problem that comes from the publisher, from the editors. That they must recognize the importance of it, and if they don't recognize that, it will be really difficult with just one workshop or something to change that. You know. Yeah.
Okay. Let's try to follow up a bit. I will have several short questions, so you can pick up what you actually like. Can we talk about maybe storytelling? This is very common technique among public relations specialists and press as well. So can it be applied to science? And regarding that, should the science communicate all phases of their scientific research, or maybe just the outcomes and results of their research?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm really expert on any of this media stuff, but I can, you know, give that a try. I think when we write papers as scientists, there is a little bit of storytelling there as well. But we're trying to avoid that because it's supposed to be as objective as possible. And I think that's our problem with headlines or anything like that, because if you're Kantian, or if you believe in that, we disagree with the principle that sensationalism is ever justified. But there's also that big skepticism that we don't necessarily see that it is the public's bottom-up approach that should be always used to make change in societies. If you work in medical fields, or if you work in physics or somewhere, there's usually a main organization in that country that is supposed to make the big decisions. And in an ideal world, these big decisions come from the consensus of all of us as scientists from that field. And it's often seen that when you go to journalists, it's because these institutions have failed. We don't always, you know, associate media with, when everything is going perfectly, then it seems to be boring news. That's why we always report, that's how we talk about media. It's always regarding something that is bad, something that is unique, or something that's out of the system. But if the system is perfectly functioning in the world of the pandemic or any other system, we would want that our research findings are incorporated by those organizations and translated to the world. How can we talk about so much how we can measure impact of our own research among ourselves and how we can promote ourselves, but how can I know that that article that it's even been read by 500,000 people has led to the cultural change or anything there? And that's where we get a lot of people don't want to, a lot of scientists don't want to be activists. Not necessarily. None of us are great at that. Not all scientists are great at being lecturers to their own students, let alone lecturers to the whole, community. So I think that's where, when the storytelling comes in, I think we're uncomfortable because we feel that it's a little bit of a deception from what we have thought is the way we write scientific articles, which are supposed to be a little bit more checked.
Thank you.
I mean, I can understand that really, but I always conduct workshops that I do. I always tell scientists, science is really effective, can be really effective. And I mean, the problem is that we must see the story that's not really immediately, clear. And for example, scientists are like some kind of heroes, and I don't mean, for example, the biggest story. One of the biggest stories of the pandemic was how and the American scientists did the research to end up in vaccine in the end. That was one of the biggest stories, and like the hero story, and that's something that I think is really important to find stories, not maybe always about research itself, but maybe about scientists who are doing this research and the effort, and the artists in that effort, and well, but I think the storytelling is really important in communicating science. That is something that probably scientists will never do. And there cannot be way that you can learn that. It needs some kind of talent, and you need a really good education about storytelling and writing. But I mean, it just scientists would shift that perception that not only the research and the results itself are the most important. Sometimes storytelling you found is correct, and that's one of the things about storytelling that is science. And but in the end, the story you have to be good storytelling in the end of the day.
Because we are basically out of time with one thing there is one for the end, with one more just for this just a couple of minutes ago. Visibility most that will huge impact on the social impact in our societies, and it's changed environment, not only behavior but also the cultural behavior. So could you tell us a little bit about that? How much the quality of science, media representation can influence some society?
I don't know. I don't know exactly about some research which would show it's very difficult. It would be very difficult to organize a kind of research that would quantify this. I can also speak from my experience, which is probably what you expect from me. But otherwise, it would be very interesting to see, how media influence people with scientific, with the popularization of science. What I can say, and this is connected with what Vedran said just a few minutes ago, is that you see, I mentioned this article that was read 500,000 times, and actually people, because you cannot go twice and it doesn't count twice. So 500,000 people unique, yeah, this it has. And but I don't think this is the important thing. This article was not that important. I wrote much better articles, and they were not that much read. Some did, some were about pandemic. They were really read, and I think they are good for my standards. But what is important, which is most important, and these numbers show something. These numbers show people are interested, and there is some reason why they read also this science section on Index. Why? Because it seems like this is what my director told me. It's not my words. They are a little like flowery words, but okay. So he said people obviously recognize that this is the place where they can get good scientific informations. And therefore, not only articles that I write, but also that other people write and we publish in the science section on our portal website. They're all read above the average expected in Croatian media. So what does it say? This says something, and when you see how much people read these articles, for how much time, like for example 5 to 6 minutes, that's something. It's quite something. In 5 to 6 minutes, of course, most of my articles cannot be read in 5 to 6 minutes because I write usually long articles, but it means that they read a lot. 5 to 6 minutes, you can read a lot, and this is average. So what I want to say, there is a visibility, definitely. People before, they, in media, on TV, do you have a science section? Actually, like in the Dnevnik, we call it, this news. You have political news, you have showbiz, you have sports, and you have some accidents and things, things like that. Cerna rubrika, black news. So, but there is no, science news, but it is becoming more and more obvious that if you are addressing certain questions, and there are so many questions, it's not just some publishing. This was published, that was published, this was published, now this was published since yesterday, it was not published. It's not just like that, but you have so many questions that you can pose from scientific perspective, and every day something comes up, This guy, he drank that and that medicine and he died. What was it that? What is this medicine? What, this is actually this this article, because somebody said that this soldier, he had a high levels of some medicine in his blood, and then everybody was interested. What is this? What is this? So you can address so many things from science perspective and ask scientists, not necessarily just speak about their researches, but to act as actually teachers of the population, as educators of the population of certain subject matters. Like, for example, Croatian major in this biggest town in Croatia, Zagreb, former. Milan Bandic, he introduced a kind of test a kind of test, and he wanted to charge people from Zagreb to charge them 100 kunas for this test. Every month, everybody would have to go to this test, not every month, but every some year or something like that. They would have to go through this test, and this would be eco tests, and they would have to go through kind of eco cleaning with hydrogen, and it was published, and everybody was wondering what's going on, and it was pure pseudoscience. This was pure pseudoscience. Come on, if this would work, imagine if this would work, then Volkswagen and Porsche and Ford and everybody would do this already, and would have this kind of instrument as a part of their car. And it was obvious. But everybody was enchanted, and journalists, they came, and they were interested in interviewing him. And there was a boy who was, real, faker. And he was employed by our mayor. Millions were supposed to go there in that direction. Millions.
But very interesting storyteller. So we can continue that how often we keep absolutely not already to do that. Anyway, Eva, thank you very much. Mario, and once again, thank you very much for participating in this final discussion. You can always my friends after this, and thank you very much for your patience.
I'll just be quick because I know it's late and thank you. We've been here the whole day. So session 6 was our last session for this year. We're going to have a coffee now, but before the coffee, I of course have to I have to send thanks to all the invited speakers. Thank you to all the speakers, to all the poster presenters, to moderators, workshop leaders, and to all participants. You here in person and people online. I don't know where the camera is, but hi to everybody. Also, of course, we have to thank our sponsors and supporters. We have to thank organizers. Yeah, I'm part of it, so I'm pretty emotional about it. Yeah, we thank organizers and student volunteers. Thank you. Especially we thank University of Zadar for being supportive for all these years and for this beautiful view each year. And that's that of thanking. Once more, thank you all that you stayed here till the end. Book of abstracts will be finished next week, and we will upload it on the website. You will be able to download it. With the also certificates of attendance. It's pretty hard work. It will also be next week online for you. That's it. Just a second. Recorded sessions. We recorded everything. Yay! That will be in a few weeks, like maybe a couple of weeks. Give us 2 weeks, and we will send you an email for everything, like next week, and maybe for the recorded sessions also. And of course, we have our PubMet YouTube channel, so you can check there. Field trip tomorrow. The meeting point is in front of rectoral buildings, and then you will walk to the place where the bus will pick us up because it can't stop here. It's too big. This is city center. And the payment for the field trip is going to be in the bus, and the receipts are going to be in the bus also. Sorry? Please cash. This is Croatia. We take only cash. No, I'm kidding. It's cash. Yeah. And also, what I would like to thank you if you are willing to take group photos, so we all can take a group photo. Zrinka will take a photo of us. We just have to decide where. Will it be here or in front of in front of the university or with the sea view? I don't know. Oh yeah, and the coffee is in the hall, and now we can all go to coffee. And yeah, with that, I close PubMet 2022. Hope to see you next year. These are the dates, like every day, like every year, we say save the dates for next year. It's our 10th anniversary next year, so it's going to be a blast. I promise you.